Hey, what's up? Ed Lawver here, and in today's tutorial we're going to be taking a look at one-point perspective and using the line tool. And after that, I want to move on to two-point perspective and three-point perspective, as well as having multiple perspectives in the same uh, piece that you're working on. Because I do eventually plan on having a series that goes through building some digital artwork. And having a firm grasp of perspective is really going to help you out. Now, I'm no complete expert on perspective, but I'm going to try to explain it in a way that maybe undoes some of the mystery that can seem to have. So I'm going to hit File, New, and I'm going to make a new document, 1200 by 800, and 72 dpi is fine. I'm just going to fill this with white real quick. The first thing I want to do is create a perspective grid. And what that basically is, it's kind of a guide for everything that we're going to create and how it lays on this document. Kind of think of perspective as how things fall into the distance. So, say you have a couch in your room and the side of that couch just went on forever. It would eventually fall into a single point. Like if you ever seen a picture of, say, railroad tracks, and how the tracks seem to merge into the distance, that's basically using one-point perspective on how they go off. I'm gonna grab my line tool, and the line tool works similarly to the other shape layers, except it'll create a single line based on the weight you give it. So if this isn't here, just hold and click on this on your vector tools, and come down to the line tool. Or alternatively, you have all your tools up here. So say if you're on the square, you can come over and just click on the line tool. And the weight works a little bit differently than the other vector tools. It works more similarly to the brush. So think of the weight as kind of your brush size. Except in kind of brushing things on, you're just going to draw a line. So if I hit right bracket on my keyboard, I can increase the weight of this. And you can see now that I've created a much bigger line. The only downside to this is you can't really tell how big it's going to be on your document until you actually create a line. So sometimes you have to create it, undo it a few times until you get the right size you're looking for. So I'm going to bring my weight back down. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a horizon line. And what the horizon line is, how things fall off into the distance. Usually it's going to be your ground plane in most cases, because everything sits on the ground, even objects inside that, say, a building on another floor, they're still part of that same plane. So they'll line up with the perspective around it. So I'm gonna click here, and I'm gonna start dragging, and then I'm gonna hold Shift on my keyboard. And what that'll do is create a perfectly straight line horizontally. You can also do this at 45-degree angles or straight up and down. I'm going to come over here, I'm just going to click and drag and create my horizon line. And so the grid I lay on top of this is all going to fall onto a single point along this for one-point perspective. But I want to change the color of my horizon line. I want this to stand out a little bit differently than the other lines that I'm going to be creating. To do that, you just double click on the box here, the colored box, and then you can kind of adjust your color to something that's going to be recognizable but not blend into what you're working on. So say if I had a mostly blue background, blue might not be a good choice for this. You want it to be visible, but you don't want it to stand out, and you can adjust the opacity of them later to help you out. So I'm okay with this. And now I'm going to just click off of there so I can change the color again. And let's see, we'll go with kind of a magenta here. And now I want to choose a point on this line for everything to fall into the distance on. So maybe right here. That seems alright. It could be boring and just put it in the center, but I'm going to offset this. And I want to pick the point that's going to be farthest away from this, because I'm going to use a step and repeat to easily draw out the rest of this grid. So I'm gonna just kind of draw that out into the corner, and now I have this magenta line. Now that I have that, I'm ready to do a step and repeat. So I'm gonna hit Control Alt T, and this will set up my first step. And I want to set the center marker to the corner. So I'm going to come up here, and you have your little box here, and I'm just going to click on the bottom right corner for the reference point, and that will just automatically set it there for me. So now that I have that, I'm gonna rotate this to create a big enough space that it's not going to be too crowded once I rotate them around. That seems alright. And now I'm ready to repeat that. So I'm going to hit Control Alt Shift T and start repeating them all the way around. And so doing this, I can make sure all of them are centered around that point, and I don't have to really do any extra work to draw all those lines. And I'm going to click off that layer so those outside points disappear. And maybe rotate it a little bit, zoom out, Control minus, maybe something like this. Doesn't really matter. I just want those two at the bottom there facing off. And so you can already kind of see, once I have that there, how everything's falling into the distance. So say these lines here on the bottom were a road. You can see how they would disappear into the horizon. I don't want this to be so bright here. So I'm going to create a group. A group is a nice way to organize a lot of layers into a folder that you can kind of hide. So just to show how it works, like, come over here, click on this little folder, create a new group, and then select both my layers by holding Shift or Control if they're not next to each other. So if I wanted shape 2 and then layer 1 without this shape 1 here, I can Control click on layer 1, and now I have them selected. Whereas if I just use Shift, it would select all three. So I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to drag them into this folder, and now I can click on this little down arrow and it will hide those layers from the layer palette. So if I had, say, 20, 30 layers there, I could put them all in a similar group and they would be out of the way. And another nice thing about using groups is any layers within that group will have a master opacity. So instead of having to control it individually on each of these layers, I can come into group 1 and adjust the opacity. So I'm going to bring this down to, say, 25%. In addition to that, you can also do all the blending modes, but for the most part you usually want pass through. Now I'm going to rename this group to something else. So to change a layer name, you just double click on it, on the wording, and just type in what you want. So I'm going to name this Perspective. And then I'm going to hide those layers. And now I'm going to create some shapes just to kind of give the basis of one-point perspective. So I'm going to come over down here, click on layer 1, and I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to grab my line tool again, which I still have selected. But this time I want to use fill pixels because I don't want to create a new shape layer every time I draw something. I just want it to act like I'm using, say, a normal brush tool, and it'll start painting on the document here. So that didn't create a vector, it just created pixels on this layer. So I'm going to undo those. Also using other shapes can kind of help as well. So we'll be using the line tool as well as the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool can also just create pixels instead of vector layers if you needed to. And I'm going to set my color to, let's go with sort of a forest green here. And I'm going to draw a box here above my horizon line. Now I'm ready to create perspective from this. And kind of think of when you create perspective off an object, look at the point that you want to create it from and say, can I see this if it goes along this line? So if I'm looking at this top right corner, will I see something falling into the distance from this? And based on this line, I can tell it would be. You can kind of already see that my guide here kind of creates a fake backdrop for this already. So if I look here, it's kind of coming off the bottom of this object. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to switch back to my line tool because I don't want to fill in. I just want to create lines to fall off this object. And now I'm going to zoom in on this. And so I'm going to come to this bottom left corner and I'm going to follow this perspective line. So this is where our guide really comes in handy. Because it's only 1 point perspective, we don't have to worry about any other lines to follow when we're doing this. So when I come across, it's going to be completely straight. So I'm just going to come over and I'm going to drag out and kind of guess where that corner is going to be. I can always fix it later if it's off a little bit. And so I'm going to come off here and just kind of follow that line like so. And I can just take an eraser here and I'm going to reset my brushes real quick because I still have the brushes I normally use when I do painting and things like that. So I'm going to bring up my brushes with F5 and then I'm going to click on this and I'm going to go to reset brushes. I'm just going to hit OK. And I already have them saved out so I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to click on one of these. You can also create straight lines when you're erasing or painting with the brush tool. So if I start here and I hold shift and drag up, it's going to erase in a straight line. So I'm going to bring back my line tool and I'm going to go to this top corner and kind of also guess on this. This is, you can see here as it gets farther away from that horizon line, the more exaggerated it becomes. So I'm just going to follow here. And then I'm going to come to this bottom corner, which I already have established. I'm going to draw upwards. I'm going to erase the extra. So I'm going to click, start dragging up, then hold shift, and erase in a straight line. So now I have a box that's in perspective for the most part. Now I want to create another one that's below the horizon line. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do it on this side this time. But this time I'm going to add an extra piece sticking out, like so. And now I have another plane to worry about. Instead of just coming off each corner and forming an easy little box, now I have to worry about this thing sticking out. So I'm going to start dragging here from this bottom point. And I'm going to kind of guess how wide this box is going to be. The longer you make these lines, the much bigger the object is going to seem. So if this goes that long, it's going to seem like a really big object. So when you're creating, say, a building, you got to be careful how close it is to the horizon and how long you make these lines. I'm just going to make this really big, and I'm going to draw points off. And I have to worry about this corner now, so I'm going to add that point as well. And I know that it's going to be a vertical line coming down, so I'm going to try to get that about even with that top line, as well as horizontally across from that line sticking out of the thing. And first things first, I'm going to come over from this way because that's probably a better estimate of where it's going to be cutting off. So you can see I would have been too far there. So there we go. I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to carefully erase the extra. I'm going to use my left bracket to shrink my eraser. There we go. And U is the hotkey for your shape layers. You can also find out if you just hover over your tool. And now I want to create this edge here. So I'm going to come in here and kind of try to line those up. And I'm going to draw downwards from this point here. You want to kind of draw out from the point that you already have established. It just makes it easier to erase any extra or adjust the new lines you're creating. I need to make this longer now, so I'm going to come out there and kind of drag that out. And now this last point here, you can see how close this is to the horizon. There's going to be barely anything up here at all. If the top edge of this was sitting directly on the horizon line, you wouldn't be able to see anything on the top. Kind of think of this as a split in the image. So anything above this you're going to see below an object, and anything in this lower half you're going to see what's on top. So I'm going to come in here, and this is going to be really squished together. So I'm going to come in and then kind of come from this, but you're still going to drag across. And as you add more and more objects to a perspective, it starts to kind of take on a life of its own. You'll be able to see mistakes when you create them more easily the more objects that fall into a single point there are. And so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a little box here. So you can see now that this is falling directly on the vertical line. So kind of think of these two as the cutoffs for how you view the sides. So now I can't see either side of these objects. So if I kind of look here as at my perspective grid, I can't draw any points here. If I drew them, it would just go into the box. I'm going to zoom in, and the only thing I can see coming out of here is the bottom. And I'm going to just make something really big, just for fun. Zoom out so I can see the whole thing. There we go. So, and I'm just going to close this off. So you can kind of see how this grid really helps you out when you go to create objects. So once again, just kind of think of this as if I were to draw a point out or a line out from anywhere on the edge of this box, would I be able to see it based on my grid? So if I was up here, now I couldn't. But over here on the side, say if I drew a line from here, yes I could. So if I wanted to start adding, say, textures within this, say like this was a striped box on the side here, you would still want to follow your lines. And as you move along, you'll probably have to adjust with the grid. You won't be able to create the same straight line there. And I'm going to create one more over here. So just something a little more complicated, like so. So now we have some things below and above, and it'll follow the same rules that we've been following. So I'm going to come in here to this top point, and I want this to be, say, maybe this long. And I'm going to create different amounts of length as we go along here. And because I can't see the top of this, I'm just going to create a straight line down, like so. And now I'm going to come over here, I'm going to make this a little bit longer, sticking out the side here. Because I can see all along here, I have to make sure I pay attention to this side here. So I'm going to come over here, create a shape here. Just come straight across by holding shift. And now I'm going to take care of this corner. So I'm just going to come out and maybe something like this. So you can see it sticks out pretty far. And just kind of erase the extra. Oops. Wrong tool there. And I'm going to come down a little bit, but I want to bring this in a lot more. So I'm going to come down, and I'm just going to come in and follow my grid to about here. And then I'm going to come down once more. And to about there maybe. But now you see I've created another plane here. And so if this is completely flat, that would be okay, but I want to add a little bit to this. So I'm going to come in and draw a straight line across, and then I'm going to draw a line with my perspective all the way back to that, like so. And as you draw lines, you can then use them to help you with your perspective. I could just follow this line pretty easily, and it should match up for the most part. And now that I have that, I can come in from this corner, which will barely be seen at all because of how close it is to the horizon line. So that's barely visible at all. It's almost creating just an extra line on top there, like so. And I'm gonna close that in. And now I'm ready to take care of the rest that's up here. And I'm not going to worry about this little point sticking out. I'll just say it's a smooth line. So, draw from my already established lines there, and erase the extra. Now I just need to take care of this little piece here. And because I can't see anything on top of there, I can just have it go into this arm thing. And now I'm ready to take care of this last little bit. And I'm gonna have this kind of extend farther because I want to create another plane on top of here. So I'm gonna come back to about here and draw straight up, come horizontally across from there, maybe a little bit farther, just so you can see with the line there. And following my grid, like so. There we go. And just come in with this. There we go. And finish this out real quick. There we are. So I kind of hope you have kind of a basic idea now of how this works. It's much more obvious when you're working with any kind of objects with hard straight lines. If you're dealing with landscapes, you have a little more freedom, but you still want to keep in mind your horizon line and how things below and above should look. So that'll do it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.